Hi everyone, I'm Mikey from University Centre Askham Bryan, and in this video we're going to look at the factors that you can consider when you're thinking about what course potentially to study at higher education, and also thinking about where you might want to study, what provider and institutions, colleges, universities that you might like to go to. So first, if you're new to the idea of higher education, you're probably thinking, what is this, Mikey? What are you trying to talk about? So, what is higher education? Essentially, as the name suggests, it's education at a higher level. If you're at college or sixth form, you're doing further education. If you want to go into more depth and study it in more detail, that's called higher education. It's normally at a university, but some colleges, such as University Centre Askham Bryan, we're at Askham Bryan College, also offer higher education. But you can also study it online as well. So things like the Open University, which is the biggest university in the UK, is mostly purely online. You can go at any age, but once you're 18 over, it really depends on whether you've got the qualifications and the experience to get a place. You can gain a degree, so you may have heard that term, you may have seen pictures and videos of people with robes and the funny hat and they throw it up. That's them celebrating graduation, where graduates will get a degree. It's usually 3 years, so you might hear a bachelor's degree, which is sort of the 3-year degree. It can be shorter, so we offer 2-year foundation degrees, but you could also go for longer, so you could go for 4 or 5 years if you were studying medicine or dentistry. So normally 3, but can be longer, can be shorter. And finally, there's lots of independent learning and thinking, which is quite a change to potentially what you're used to in school and college. So there's a lot of responsibility and emphasis on you as a student learning and sort of going into detail about your subject yourself. So why do people go on to study at higher education? If you ask anyone that's been or is going, they probably have their own reasons and their own motivations. And so if you are thinking about going to higher education, think about what sort of is driving you potentially to that. But they can normally be divided into 3 main reasons. First one is future career. So a lot of careers, say medicine, normally require people to have a degree. So if you want to be a doctor of medicine, you're going to need to have a medicine degree. Having said that, a lot of careers and a lot of jobs just ask for a degree. They don't necessarily specify what subject, but it can, as that says, it can improve job prospects. So some people go to university and study higher education to give themselves a little bit of an edge when it comes to future employment. Second one, passion for the subject. So some people just love what they're doing, love the subject that they're studying, and just want to go into more detail. They just want to sort of commit themselves for the next few years, just learning more because it really excites them. So potentially people who like writing stories maybe, or writing journal articles, just really enjoy what they're doing and just so passionate that they want to know more. And that's a perfectly acceptable reason to go on and study that in higher education. And finally, there's personal reasons. So higher education isn't just about the course, the degree, the subject that you're studying. You also gain a lot more just from the experience of being there and studying at a higher level. Gain a lot of transferable skills such as communication, time management, that sort of thing. You also experience student life. So when we talk about societies, clubs, sports, some things that you might not have tried before, higher education and studying potentially at university and college can give you the ability and the opportunity to do things that you might not have thought about or tried before. So there's some of the reasons why people choose to go on to study at higher education, but what are the benefits? What do graduates after their time get out of it? So you can see a few are listed on this slide. These are just a few that I've come up with. There are plenty more benefits, I'm sure, if you ask people, potentially teachers or friends, family, whoever, if you know anyone that's gone on to higher education, they'll probably tell you a lot more benefits that they've had. But just going through some of them, so there's research to suggest that graduates are more likely to participate in public life, so are more likely to engage potentially with volunteering, voting, that sort of so civic engagement, which is really good. It's also shown to have greater social cohesion and social mobility. They are also more likely to earn more over their lifetime than people that haven't gone to study in higher education. You can also, I think one of the big ones is that you have fun. It's not just about the studying, the course. There's so much opportunity. The student experience as a whole is such a unique experience, and one that a lot of people will get a lot of skills and experience that will help you with later life, both career but also personally as well. So that's kind of the reasons why people might go to university and study higher education, and also what people might get out of it. But probably the first question one we need to think about maybe is how do you choose what to study? There's a lot of courses out there, so how do you know which one is right for you? So as I mentioned, there's over 50,000 courses available in the UK, and they're offered at around 395 providers, so colleges, universities. So you can imagine there's so much choice and options available to you that it can be quite daunting to know where to start. I'd recommend that you think about what you want to study, so the course, the subject that you're passionate about, before you start thinking about where you might want to go. And so that's what we'll come to first, is how do you choose what you might want to study at higher education. So I mentioned that there's so much choice, there's so many courses, over 50,000, and a bit of a game. See if you can work out which 3 aren't available to study at higher education in the UK. You can either pause this video and have a little think, or we'll go through now. So we'll just go through one by one. Contemporary circus and physical performance. You can study that at higher education at Bath Spa University. Golf management. You can study at the University of Birmingham. Genetics. You can study genetics in a few places, but for instance, Swansea University. Ballistic engineering, so rockets and things, you can't study. This isn't a course at UK university at the moment. DJ practice, you can study at the University of Central Lancaster. Perfumery, what are we thinking? You can't study that at the moment at higher education. If you wanted to be a perfumer, you can still do that potentially, but it would be a different route, maybe through on-the-job training rather than a higher education course. Cruise management. University of Plymouth, if that's what you want to do. Ethical hacking is becoming very popular, and you can study that at Abertay University. So that is all about systems and protection for maybe banks and big corporations. Waterfowl psychology. You can't study at the moment a higher education course on waterfowl psychology, but a lot of psychology courses, animal psychology, animal behaviour courses might involve different sort of animals and things like that. So although you can't specialise in waterfowl psychology, it might be a module or a part of another course. International spa management. You can study at the University of Derby. Equestrian psychology, as I mentioned before, that is a course at University of Nottingham. And then finally, space science and robotics. You can study at Aberystwyth University. So hopefully that shows just the breadth of subjects available to study at higher education. There might be some courses that you've heard of and thought about before, things like genetics you might have heard about in biology. Also other subjects such as equestrian psychology that you might not have even thought about, but you can study, and it is available to study at higher education. So there's so many subjects, so many areas that you could go on to and study in the future. So with all that choice, how do you narrow it down? How do you know what you want to study? So I've got a few points, a few things for you to think about potentially. First one is your interests and career goals. So what do you want to do in the future? Where do you want to be? If you have an idea of the job you want, then that can kind of guide you and help you along the way to think about what you might want to study at higher education. A classic example would be medicine. If you want to be a doctor, you kind of need to study medicine. So that'll help to narrow down what subject you might want to do in the future. A big one, and one that I'd really recommend thinking about, is what do you enjoy doing? Not just at school, college. If there's a subject, a particular part of your course that you are really passionate and interested in, that's really important. But also maybe in your extracurricular activity, so anything that you do outside of school and college. Is there something that you really enjoy and are really passionate about, and you could go on and study that? So things like sport, if you really enjoy playing rugby, for example. You might enjoy sports management, sports coaching, that sort of thing. So think about what do you really enjoy as a whole. Do you fancy something new? So even if you don't like anything that you're studying at school or college currently, have a little look on websites and things and see if there's a completely new course that you might like to look at and investigate. As you saw from the previous slide, there's so many courses, probably more than you've ever heard of, and more than you're probably studying or have studied before. There's so much options that actually maybe if you don't enjoy anything, it might be something that you look to do something completely new that you've not done before. How many subjects? So at university and college, in higher education, normally you study one subject and specialise in that, but there's also, depending on where you are going and thinking about, you could also study more than one subject. So things like natural sciences, which is a combination of many different sciences. If you can't think you just want one science, like biology or chemistry, you could study natural sciences, which is a mixture of them all. So think about if you're interested in one particular subject, or if you might like a subject or a course that allows you to study more at the same time. And finally, what are you looking for from higher education? What is it that you're hoping to learn, to develop? What are the skills that you're hoping to gain? That can sometimes help narrow down the area, the subject that you might want to look at and pursue. So if you wanted to gain performance skills, then maybe a drama theatre type of course might be for you. So think about, in addition to what you want to what you might enjoy and your interests, careers, that sort of stuff. Think about what you want to take away at the end of the day from the experience, higher education, and that can sometimes help. They're just 5 things that could help you to think about what you might like to study at higher education. There's no right or wrong way of going about it, and it might take a few weeks, months even, to really narrow down what area, subject that it is that you would like to study at higher education. But if you do take anything away, I'd really recommend being open-minded and really taking the time to explore what you might like to study, what you might not like to study, because they're equally as important. Some resources that I recommend having a look at to do that. Prospects is a really good website. If you just search Prospects on Google or whatever, that is a website that can help you narrow down courses, areas, jobs based on skills and qualifications, and yeah, so browse by the sector, and that can help you narrow down what you might want to do in the future. Finally, UCAS. You'll probably hear about this quite a lot. We'll come on to it at the end of this video. But UCAS is where you search and apply when you're ready to a higher education course. So that will have all those 395 providers and over 50,000 courses on there. So that is one where you can have a look to see what's available in the UK. So when we're looking at courses specifically, so you might have had an idea about what you want to study. Now it's looking into the detail about what courses, programs and degrees look like. So some things that I would recommend that you consider and have a look at, make a note of, is course structure. So contact time means any time, how much time that you're in front of the tutor, that you're in the college, in university, studying in front of someone. So whether that's in a lecture, a seminar, a practical, that sort of thing. So have a look at how much contact time you'd have, in addition to assessment methods. So at university, I quite enjoyed exams. I was good at them. I wasn't really good at coursework. You might be the opposite, you might be the same. And so really you can apply for courses and have a look at courses that play to your strengths really when it comes to assessment. Teaching technique as well. So some people really like lectures, so are really good at absorbing all the information as it comes in. Some people prefer practical hands-on experiences as well. A lot of universities and colleges will provide a mixture, but some courses might have more than others. Move on, study abroad. So a lot of providers will offer the opportunity for you to spend maybe a few weeks, a few months, maybe even a year studying abroad. So if that's something that you might be interested in, definitely have a look to see which courses offer that. Modules, this is an important one. So what are the core and optional modules? Just because something has the title, it doesn't necessarily mean the courses are exactly the same. So just because something is called history, it doesn't mean that all history courses look exactly the same. So some institutions, some colleges and universities might focus on one period of history, others might focus on another. So really look into the detail of what it is that you'd actually be studying in the modules. Is it professionally accredited? So some colleges and universities will offer professional accreditation. So essentially their courses are accredited by an external body. So say if you study in psychology, some courses at colleges and universities will be accredited by the British Psychological Society. Some jobs require that, some don't. So it's really worth having a look to see which courses offer accreditation and whether you need that going forward. Is there an entrance exam or interview? A lot of places and a lot of courses may call you in for interview, so is that a requirement for you? And also, do you need to sit an entrance exam? So if you're applying for Oxford or Cambridge, for example, a lot of their courses might ask for an entrance exam. Work experience. So do you need work experience to apply? And what detail is that? So most of this will be listed in the entry requirements. So definitely worth checking to see whether you could use this summer over the next few weeks to get that work experience to help you with your application. And can you work as part of your course? So is work experience and work placement actually part of what you'd be doing? And how much would that be? Is work experience and work placement essential? Is it a core part of the course, or is it optional? Can you do it on the side and choose to? Employability. So what does graduate employability look like? How likely are you to be offered a job after studying the course? Finally, reputation. So you can have a look round either on the internet or ask around at school, college, and see the reputation of the course and what other people think about it. So that is a quick rundown of things to think about and consider, not only when you're thinking about what to study, but then when you're going into the detail of the courses. So you've chosen what subject maybe, what area you might like to study, but then what things that you need to consider when you're looking at actually what course that you might like to pick. So we'll come on to the second half now, which is where to study. So you've thought about what you would like to study, you've thought about courses that you'd like to do. So now how do you narrow down those 395 providers to choose 5 or 4 or 5 when you apply via UCAS? So we'll go through 5 things to think about when you're choosing your institution, so when you're choosing the university or college that you'd like to study at. And we'll go through availability of your course, location, size, course specifics, and then some other factors that would be really useful to think about. So if we go on to availability first, this is probably the first one that you need to do to narrow down all those institutions in the UK. And by availability, I mean how many institutions offer what it is that you'd like to study. So if we take history, for example, there's 2,383 courses in the UK offered by 146 providers that involve some sort of history. So if we take that figure, 146 providers offer some sort of history. So if we go on to something a little bit more specialised, maybe something like animal management, you can see that only 55 providers offer animal management course in the UK. So that is significantly fewer than the providers offering history. If we go even further than that, if you wanted to study Vietnamese, you could only study Vietnamese at one provider. I'll let you use UCAS to discover which provider that is. But you can see that as your course gets a little bit more specialised, maybe a little bit more niche, the options that you can choose in terms of provider decrease. So you've got a smaller pool of providers to choose from. So I'd recommend that being your first step, is see which providers offer the course and the subject that you're interested in the first instance. Then we'll go on to location. So the biggest difference maybe in some providers would be whether they're campus-based or city-based. By campus, we mean that everything is all in one place. It's almost like a mini town or community. University Centre Askham Bryan, we're a campus college, and so we've got everything in one place, and we're slightly out of the city of York, but we've got our own campus. You can see here that some advantages and disadvantages. So some advantages is that everything's in one place. There's a mix between the academic, so the lecture theatres and the labs are next to the accommodation, next to the cafe and the catering hall. So it's all in one place. Safety and security, so we have our own security. A lot of campus institutions will have their own security. That keeps everything safe and everyone secure. And potentially a little bit cheaper than the cost of living. So because you're living in institutions, maybe accommodation on site, that can be sometimes cheaper than accommodation in the middle of a city centre. Some disadvantages is that it can be a bit of a campus bubble. It can be, if you don't want to, because you can stay in one place for weeks, months, that becomes your own world, and you might not know what's happening in the middle of the city that you're living in. Distance to town, so some campuses can be a little bit far out. So we're around 20 minutes, half an hour on the bus or drive from the city centre. Other institutions can be in the middle of the countryside maybe. Other campuses might be a little bit closer, so sometimes distance. And then securing accommodation as well. So because it's not in the middle of a city or a town centre, the closest accommodation will be probably that offered by the provider. So securing accommodation could be quite competitive. So that is a campus institution. Now if we go on to a city institution, have a look at the differences. King's College London is an example of a city university, and this is slap bang and scattered around the centre of London. And so what this means is that the lecture theatres, potentially one university building, might be next to the shops or the cinema or the theatre, and so it might be in the middle of a busy street. Some people love that. Some people love coming out of a lecture and being next to Topshop or whatever. Some people don't. There's no such thing as right or wrong. It's what's best for you. So some city advantages is that there's a variety of locations. You might have one lesson in one part of the city, and then you might have to go across to another part of the city and experience different things, see a different side of the city that you might not be used to. Attractions and facilities, so because you're slap bang in the middle of everything, you are more closer to what is happening, all the attractions and all the facilities such as libraries, city libraries, so you can use everything that is either part of your institution or also not part of your institution. And so that's kind of a draw as well. Lively atmosphere. Because you're in the middle of the city or the town, that is where everything happens. So all the cultural events, all the festivals maybe, will be right next to where you spend most of your time. And wider community involvement. So because you're part of the city, slap bang in the middle, you're more likely to be involved in what is happening in the city or town. Some disadvantages does include travel time. So as I mentioned before, you might be on one side of the city, have to go to the other. And if you're doing that in the middle of rush hour traffic, that could be quite an issue. Student numbers to population, so the more institutions in the middle of a city centre or town, probably the fewer residents and locals that you'll bump into. So it might be harder to embed yourself in sort of the local life really and get a real feel for the city that you're living in. And then also the cost of living. So it tends to be that if you're living in the middle of a busy town or a busy city, there might be a few more expenses as well. As I mentioned, there's no such thing as right or wrong, it's just what's best for you. So they're just some advantages and disadvantages of the two main different types of institution, the campus institutions and the city institutions. But also when we're thinking about location, we don't just mean where it's based, so if it's a city or it's a campus. Have a little think about whether whether you want to go to somewhere new, so whether you want to move away from home to travel maybe to the other end of the country, or whether you want to stay at home, whether you want to stay in the city that you live in the city or the town that you live in currently. How good are the transport links? This is something to think about, whether if you're wanting to maybe travel home, maybe every few days, every weekend, can you do that easily? Living costs, as I mentioned, so if you're thinking about going to higher education and going through the student finance system, how far is your maintenance loan going to cover your living costs? That's one to have a little think about. The size of town or city. So do you want to go somewhere big where everything's happening, or do you want to go to a smaller town maybe for a little bit more slower pace of life, a little bit more relaxing? No right or wrong, what's best for you. So we move on to size of institution. This can be, you can get a different experience depending on how big the institution or small the institution is. So when we think about somewhere like the University of Manchester, slap bang in the middle of Manchester, that has around 40,000 students just at the University of Manchester. So there's people from around the world and lots of people studying at one university. So you're more likely to meet a lot of different people that you may not have met before. If we're thinking a little bit closer to home, so York St John University, this has a student population of 6,500 students. So not as big as Manchester, so nowhere near as big as Manchester really, but still probably bigger than your school or college currently. And finally, if we move on to us, University Centre Askham Bryan, we've got around 500 higher education students. So you can see that we are considered a small provider. There's only a couple of hundred students studying with us. There's no right or wrong. They all offer something very different. So if you want a smaller institution, a little bit more closer feel, then maybe a smaller provider is for you. But if you want somewhere where you're going to see a lot of different faces and meet loads of people and really get out there and really be sociable, there may be a bigger institution, maybe somewhere like Manchester, might be for you. So move on to course specifics. So when we're looking at what does the provider offer with your course that is different and unique to what the institutions are providing. So what are the typical grade requirements for the course? So each institution will set their own requirements. So have a little think and have a little look about where they are in compared to what you're looking at and what your predicted grades are. Are there essential subjects listed? So some courses from some providers will ask that you have studied certain subjects. So again, have a little research to see whether the providers are offering courses that you would be eligible to apply for. There's no point applying for a course that is asking for a specific subject that you aren't studying. Is experience required, as I mentioned before? So do you need to have had done work experience? That can be an entry requirement that is worth having a look at. And finally, is the course accredited? So some institutions will get their courses accredited, some won't. So have a look at which ones do, which ones don't, and whether you need that for your future plans. Finally, additions. So what is the institution offering as a whole that might be different to other providers and institutions? So some providers will offer a work placement or a year in industry. So if that's something that you might be interested in, it's definitely worth researching to see whether that's an option for the course that you're picking. Can you study abroad? So kind of like work placement. Is there an option for you to spend a week, month, a year studying at a partner institution that they may have? What facilities does the institution have? So if you're interested in sport, for example, whether you're applying to study sport or just interested, what do the sports facilities look like? They can vary from institution and provider. So really have a look at what facilities are you looking for and what do they look like? What quality are they in the provider? And do they have the sports and societies that interest you? So you can normally have a look at the students' union that is attached to the provider. They're normally run by students for students, and they offer clubs, societies, things to do outside of your course. So if you're doing something currently that you're really passionate and you want to continue, do they offer it? Does the students' union offer that so you can continue? And finally, does the institution or provider offer scholarships and bursaries that you may be eligible for? So you can normally have a look on their website or get in touch with an admissions tutor to see whether they offer this and whether you're eligible. But essentially this would be free money that you would receive to help you with maybe living costs or tuition fees that you don't have to pay back. Some providers offer a lot more than others, and some offer scholarships and bursaries depending on the course as well. So really have a look to see whether that's something available to you. And finally, pastoral care. So should anything happen, what support services are offered by the institution and provider to help you in higher education? So I've mentioned this before, and I'll continue to mention and really hammer it home. There's no such thing as the best course or the best university or college. There's only what's best for you. And so you really need to take time and consider what course, what subject that you are interested, you're passionate, you really want to do, but also the institution, the provider that you're going to feel comfortable with and going to feel happy going to for 2, 3, 4, 5 years of your life. There's no such thing as right or wrong, it's just what's best for you. So we've covered choosing, considering what and where to study, and now we'll just touch on how. You might have heard me mention UCAS before. UCAS stands for the Universities and Colleges Admission Service, and this is what we use to search for higher education courses in the UK and also apply. So this is the service where all UK undergraduates will go through to apply for a higher education course in the UK. It is the only method to get onto a degree course. So if you want to go to higher education in the UK, you're going to need to go through UCAS and submit a UCAS application. That's that magic number. So all the 50,000 courses from the 395 providers will be listed on UCAS. You can apply to up to 5 universities, colleges and courses. So that means you can apply to one provider for 5 of the courses that they offer. So you could apply to University Centre of Askham Bryan for 5 courses. Or you could apply to 5 different providers for one course. So if you wanted to study biology, you could apply for biology at 5 different places. There are restrictions on that, so you can, if you want to study medicine, veterinary medicine or dentistry, you can normally only apply to 4 courses there and use your 5th choice for something else. And you can normally only apply to either Oxford or Cambridge. Very rarely can you apply for both. So there's plenty of places to find out a little bit more about courses and providers, and I recommend searching on the UCAS website, UCAS Search, because as I mentioned, that's where all the HE courses in the UK are listed. So if you want a one-stop shop of what's available, UCAS is a really good place to start. There are also other websites such as What Uni and the Student Room, where current students at providers and studying their courses will normally tell prospective students a little bit about what they're doing and what it's like to be a student there. Visits and open days, if at all possible. If you narrow down where you might like to go, I'd really definitely recommend going to visit. Sometimes you can get a gut feeling that this feels like home, or this feels comfortable, or this doesn't. And so you really need to kind of experience it. I'd really recommend trying to experience it through visits and open days. Higher education fairs, so people like me and my colleagues from across the UK will normally attend higher education fairs either in the college or schools, but also run by UCAS. And so you can speak to people like us to ask specific questions that you might have about courses and providers, also what it's like as an institution as a whole. So definitely make use of that if you can. Literature, so most places will offer prospectuses for free. Prospectuses are normally quite big books which list all the courses, a little bit of information about what they offer and entry requirements as well. There's also leaflets and guides produced by universities, colleges and also students' unions as well, which can be quite useful to get a feel for courses and providers. So finally, some top tips from me. First one is really do your research. It's never too early to have a little look and start thinking about what you might want to study and where you might want to study. So if you have a specific career or job in mind, what skills, qualities, knowledge would you need for that career, and what subjects and courses might give you those skills and knowledges? And that can sometimes help to lead you on to the next step. I mentioned before, visit open days and visit days. It is about that gut feeling. It's about feeling whether you fit in or not, whether you'd be happy there and feel comfortable. At the end of the day, you're going to be spending 2, 3, 4, 5 years at this provider, institution and city. So it's so important that you feel comfortable and you can see yourself living and studying and socialising there. Ask lots and lots of questions. So colleagues in universities and colleges who deal with applications on a day-to-day, they want to help. They want to make sure that you're making the best decision you can for you. They're some of the most lovely people, I think, and they really are there to help you make your decision. There's no such thing as a silly question, because at the end of the day, you need all the answers, you need all the information to make an informed decision on your future and where to study and what to study. So ask all the questions that you have. Depending on the way that you learn and the way that you process information, sometimes it can be quite useful to make a list. So make a list of all your thoughts, your feelings, your questions about a course and provider. Sometimes it can be useful to do a pros and cons list as well and think about it as a bigger picture, so that you know that you're making the right decision. And finally, hammer this home: you know you best. You know what you like. You know what you don't like. And this is an investment in you. It'll be you that's going to university or college, and it'll be you that is studying something for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And so it's important that it's your decision, not your friends, not your parents, not your dogs. You need to be happy with the decisions that you make at the end of the day. So that's all from me. Thank you very much for watching. If you do have any questions about anything in this video, anything that I've mentioned, please send me an email at inquiries@Askham-Bryan. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that you might have. And also, finally, if you've got a spare 2 minutes, I really appreciate your feedback on this video. So if you run your phone camera over that QR code, or put that bit.ly into your browser. Really appreciate to know what you liked about this video, what you didn't like this video, what you might like to see in the future, just so I know that we're doing the right thing doing this, and that you're getting all the information that you need. Thanks again, and I'll see you soon.